Hello and welcome to the EV Cafe Takeaway, a podcast focused on that zero-emission future that we all hope for. Every week I get joined by one of the wonderful members of the EV Cafe team. And this week, no exception, I got the lovely and wonderful and delightful John Curtis.
Goodness.
Do you have a middle name, John?
I do. It's William.
Do you know, I knew it. I almost said John William Curtis because it sounds grander, doesn't it?
You would be right. And on my wall, I have a commendation from the King. During the Second World War, my grandfather, who was William Ivan Luke, William, he was honoured in the D-Day stuff that went on. And so I have that on my wall with his medals. And that's who I'm named after. John is my dad, so I'm John. He's John. William, my grandfather. And Curtis, because we're the best in the world. Thank you.
I unreservedly apologise, everyone, for that deeply uninteresting start to the podcast. No, that's not true. Actually, that's not true. That's John doing a mic drop and making everybody feel small right from the start. But anyway, that's not going to be the case because we every week get joined by some amazing people from across our industry. Pioneers, collaborators, innovators, and this week is no exception. We have the lovely and wonderful Tom Middleditch from Europcar, everybody. Tom, welcome.
Good morning. I was worried where we were going to go with middle names and all that kind of stuff, and I thought I was here to talk about EVs.
Let's continue on the middle name.
We go from
for Middleditch.
Well, exactly. We go from middle name to middle ditch. It's brilliant.
Ditch, yes. So, what is the ditch within the middle of your name?
I'm a James, so I'm a Thomas James.
Thomas James.
Doesn't get much more early 80s than that, does it? Thomas James.
So I'm a Paul Anthony, and it's not Anthony, TH, it's Anthony, and it's based on Antony and Cleopatra. There we go.
Very good. I don't know.
So
what
you're a
mine's based on.
Pac-Man.
So I see your king, and I raise you a Caesar.
P-A-K, Pac-Man.
Pac-Man, yeah. So that was my that was one of my handles throughout my life. I've been Pac-Man. Yeah. Anyway,
I can feel some sound effects coming on.
Oh dear. Well, anyway, Tom, listen, welcome, and indeed, we will get to the subject of electric vehicles because that is the purpose. But Tom, tell us a little bit about how you got to do what you do, and tell us what it is that you do, and a little lift speech about Europcar. I think most of us know, but I think it's important to give you some context.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear everyone hopefully knows. But so Europcar is Europe's leading vehicle rental company. So cars and vans we rent them to businesses and individuals, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever it is you might want. And we have a global footprint, and this year celebrating our 75th year. So we've got a few.
Doesn't look a day over 40, does he?
A little bit over maybe, John. Yeah. So
I'm just thinking he's got really big feet. Anyway, sorry. Go on.
Don't know
Tom,
where that's going.
Please.
I'm not sure where we're going now.
Global footprint.
Oh, yeah. You keep us in check, Paul. We'll be all right. And then my role at Europcar, so I'm the head of electric mobility for Europcar in the UK. And that role is a lot about collaborating with the teams across the company, all of which have various things with EV which they're involved in, and making sure we're sort of coordinated and focused and pointing in the right direction, and focused on the right things that are going to make the correct impact that we want to make as a business. And I found myself in that role, having sort of put my hand up a little while ago saying, look, what's next? What more is there for me to get stuck into? And this was seen as a challenge within our business that needed a little bit of grabbing a hold of and working out what we were going to do and what direction we were going to go. So and I find myself in the position, which has been great.
Well, and you've got the job and you've got the T-shirt. I mean, I do love the top that you are sporting. EV expert. Now, for those of you that can't see, you'll have to go onto YouTube and check out the EV expert with the green zigzag to match our yellow zigzags.
Yeah. So these shirts are part of a trial we're doing, actually, Paul. So this is we did some. You'll remember we're going to talk about the EV Rally later on, but the EV Rally last year, we had some branded shirts we won. We stopped at our location at Heathrow, so our flagship location in the UK. We stopped at Heathrow, and some of the guys there afterwards contacted, "Can we have some of the shirts? Can we have some of the shirts?" And we said, "Yeah." We sent them the shirts. And there's a strange impact that happened on those members of staff that were just trying to test and see if it worked, but they felt more confident talking about electric vehicles. They've all had the training, they all know things, but they all felt more confident when they were wearing their EV Rally shirts. So we've made these shirts as a bit of a trial at Heathrow Airport to see how the staff get on with wearing them and sort of having them badged, because we have these experts across all our branches who are ready to talk about EVs. So this is part of that test, so I thought I'd wear one today.
Well, it's working.
Fantastic.
It's definitely working.
Yeah.
Now then, nobody, I imagine, started out in life and, going through school thinking, I want to be the head of e-mobility at Europcar. It just doesn't happen. So tell us about, what did you want to be when you were at school? What was the master plan?
Yeah, so my dad always worked in the travel industry, and that meant we had lots of quite lovely holidays. And I think I probably thought I had two choices. One was to be very, very well paid so that I could continue turning left when I got onto an aeroplane. Or the other one was to probably do what he did, which was to work in travel and get a hold of all the travel perks. Now, back then, the travel perks used to be really good, and perhaps they're not quite so great anymore. But that was kind of my decision, that I was going to work in travel. And I decided fairly young, and I actually started at Thomas Cook. When Thomas Cook used to be the leading travel agency. They were the one you went to. And I actually went straight from school and I did an apprenticeship at Thomas Cook. And I worked my way up and I did a few years and I became a manager of a branch, and kind of started thinking, I'm not sure I like talking directly to these customers that keep coming in. I think there must be something else I could be doing. I always quite like the marketing side of working there. I kind of was always very particular about how the window looked. And you remember all those cards you used to have in the window with the deals written on?
Yes.
I was always very particular about all of those things work. So I started trying to find my way into a marketing role in travel, and I applied for a few things, and a few people told me, you haven't got a piece of paper with your name on it that says you can do marketing. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go and I'll get one of those pieces of paper so that I can come back and we can have this exact same conversation, and you'll listen to me because I've got the piece of paper that says. And that's kind of the way I learned, is doing, not learning from books and everything else. Despite being perfectly good at school and did well and all those kind of things, it's just not the way I kind of like to learn things. And then I got my first role for a company called Alamo Rent-A-Car, US firm based down here in Brighton. And that was my first role in marketing. And then it kind of continued from there as I worked through a few different travel companies. So I've always come from the sort of travel industry side, if you like, into car rental, rather than some of the motor trade way into the car rental industry, which is kind of typically where a lot of people come from.
It's one of the things that's been curious for me as we've got to know Europcar. You very much see yourselves as a partner to the travel industry, and it's just me being a bit of a Luddite. I've never quite seen it that way until obviously engaged with you guys, and it makes so much sense, because what we're actually trying to do is make life easier to travel or cleaner to travel, so whether it's electric vehicles or, bikes or planes, trains, automobile, the whole 9 yards, right? We're trying to decarbonize this whole sector. So, and travel and the wider context of it, rental is a really important part. Is that how you see rental in this context?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, if you look at Europcar if you look at the European footprint, I mean, globally the same, but if you look particularly at the European footprint, I mean, it kind of depends on the country that you work in. So, if you work at Europcar Spain, an awful lot of your business is tourists coming on holiday, getting off a plane. That's a big part of what you do in a big part of the world that they have. In the UK, we're a bit more evenly split between people who are, renting for personal, and then we do an awful lot of business hire in the UK. So we're pretty evenly split, and it's kind of across the board. It's that different thing, but I always think of it. And when I first moved into vehicle rental, it's just about moving people and things, right? It's still, I still, if people ask me, I still say I work in the travel industry. I don't say I work in motoring or something else. I say I work in travel, because the way I see it is, this is, you're renting a vehicle to go somewhere. That purpose of going somewhere might be for work, but that's just what we call business travel, right? So it's all about that. And then the van stuff is about moving the things rather than necessarily the people. So I still think of it as the travel industry, and always have. But yeah, and then, decarbonising it, Paul, and doing that is the right thing to do. And it's also, Europcar vehicle rental companies, we don't make any vehicles. We don't produce any. So as the world and the market moves, we move with it. And I think, Europcar's made the decision to really embrace that and go with it. And I, at the moment, at this stage in it, you kind of hope the whole rental industry will do that, because we all need to do it together. And in a few years' time, we'll compete and start being like we are with one another. But for now, actually, let's all kind of do that, because we need to.
You mentioned Heathrow earlier, and one of the big opportunities for EV, especially in my view, is tourists, is incoming people to this marketplace who want to come and see a beautiful, clean country. And it's actually a really early stage emerging market, isn't it? The use of EVs as a rental vehicle by people who live here, even more so for those who travel. Presumably, having your global footprint gives you an opportunity to get them before they leave to arrive in this country and to sell them the dream of an EV in the UK.
Yeah, and actually an incredibly big portion of the electric vehicles that we have on hire today are to exactly that, inbound customers coming in. We do a lot out of Heathrow and a lot out of Edinburgh airports. That's where we have an awful lot of EVs for exactly that reason, because that's where the demand is. We try and put the vehicles where the demand is. So yeah, we're absolutely seeing it. And we've asked a few of them. We don't ask everyone, but we see a lot of US tourists coming in, and they're very happy to rent them, and invariably would like to find themselves in a Tesla, because that's probably what they're driving at home, and they're looking to just kind of continue that experience. So that's great. And we kind of have these two groups of people come to us for EVs. The ones who are in, they've got an EV already, whether that's in another country or it's here, and they're moving around, and they're in, and they want to carry on being in. And then we have that other group of, I've never done this before, and actually I don't really know how to do this, and I've spoken to a dealership, and I've done a test drive for maybe an hour if you're lucky, and I haven't really experienced what this is. So this is my chance. I've got a reason to do a bit of travel in the UK, or whatever the reason might be, or it could be I literally want to rent just to experience an electric vehicle. And they're kind of our two groups. So for our guys in the station, so you take Heathrow as that example, that conversation can be really different with a customer. You could have someone who's in EVs, knows everything about it, absolutely happy. Yep, give me my card and I'll be on my way into my Tesla. Or the people who literally, this is really the first time they're doing it without any kind of safety net of, I'm going to drop it back at the dealer in 30 minutes.
And your role really is key in that, isn't it? Because what you're doing is you have an opportunity to either get somebody committed to EV because they have a good experience, or absolutely against it because they say, I didn't understand the vehicle, I don't understand charging, you didn't help me, I was stranded, and that's a problem. So your role in this whole market is critical.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, we don't take that lightly. The guys in the stations have all been through training programs, whichever side that EV expert thing is, they go through a training program. They have to have some time experiencing an EV for themselves. Yeah, exactly. They have to be hands-on and have that experience, and then they have to have the education and the confidence to be able to have that conversation with the customer. Plus, don't forget, sometimes they're having a conversation with the customer where they're actually suggesting, have you thought about trying an electric vehicle? Because customers come in, they've made their booking on the website as normal or wherever they've done it, and they've turned up and they're having a conversation. And, car rental firms, no different. You'll have always had this conversation when you're there. There's a few questions that get asked, trying to find out a little bit about what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be going, how many people are with you, how many bags are with you, if it's an airport, that kind of thing. And they're trying to find out, actually, if you booked the right vehicle, or you're going to walk out and you're trying to put your 12 suitcases in the back of a Fiesta. So they're trying to do that. And now in the mix of that as well, they've also got, actually, an electric vehicle might be really good for you. Have you ever tried one? Have you ever driven one? And then they're trying to take people on that journey and help them through that. The good news is we know that's going well, because we survey every customer at the end of every rental. And continually, over the last year, 18 months, every single month, we see a higher score for customers who've driven an electric vehicle than those who've driven an ICE vehicle, consistently. So the ones that are doing it like it. And our hope is, as our fleet grows, and if I think about it more commercially for a second, as our fleet grows and more, we're saying to people, do you want an EV? Do you want an EV? Because that's what we've increasingly got. The fact that the ones who have done it before are coming back and saying, yeah, actually, I really liked that. Well, hopefully, right, we got one. Next time they're going to ask for one. Now let's find the next one, and then next, and keep going. But we see that consistently, which is really positive.
But it does feel, and just in the conversation that we're talking, and I think we would exemplify this outside as well, but it feels like you're having to push. It's more, it's not people are coming in and going, oh, please can I have an electric vehicle, or please can I try one out. It's a very creditable push from Europcar to help people understand, and doing it in the right way as well, by educating, informing, qualifying, giving confidence to those customers. But the reality is, it does feel, though, that we need to make some improvements. I know that we're very much relying on the business world to be able to drive this adoption. That's through money, really, at the end of the day, benefit in kind, tax values being beneficial to the drivers. So it feels like that EV adoption still needs a bit of improvement. Would you agree?
Yes. I mean, and it's going to continue to. And I think there's always, we speak to a lot of businesses, and they talk to us about, I'm not ready to do this with my whole fleet yet. And it's like, that's okay. Who said you had to do your whole fleet right now? Easy. That's all right. We're not there yet. And this is about being able to ramp that up. But you're right. So we know where the demand of the purchase of these electric vehicles is going to fleets, and it's going to rental companies and lease companies, and it's going out that way. And we talk about the private drivers not getting so much of it. I think some of that's a little bit muddied. You've got salary sacrifice schemes and all those kind of things that we know are doing increasingly well. So I think there are actually quite a lot of private drivers who are in them through one of the various schemes that are there. But we're starting to see the number of vehicles that are going to private drivers dropping off. We see that in the SNM stats, right? And we know it needs some help. At the moment, I think it's an awful lot on industry to be pushing this. And I think, the new government is in now. And one of the things they told us was they were going to look at the 2035, bringing back to 2030, but it wasn't in the King's speech. So it doesn't seem to be an immediate priority. But, we've seen some other things they've done. So hopefully that will come. And I think what we need as an industry, and not just vehicle rental, but we need a bit of consistency in the message, because I think that'll help people. Because at the moment, the ZEV mandate's there, right? So the OEMs are doing this sort of regardless of what the 2030, 2035 is, it doesn't really matter. And as a vehicle firm, that impacts us. No one wants to be driving a rental car that's 5 years old. Everyone's expectation is they're 12, 18 months old. So you can kind of look on paper and kind of look ahead and think, well, if nothing changes, we've probably got a year, 18-month lag after it's 100% EVs are being sold, that we will be a 100% electric rental fleet. Well, at the moment, Paul, you're right. We're not having to push people, but we're having to do things to incentivize people to take an electric vehicle. So we have a couple of things that kind of jump to mind that I can think of. One, we changed the policy when it came to, do you need to recharge that vehicle before you bring it back? So anyone who's ever rented an ICE vehicle will know the typical policy is refuel it before you bring it back. Otherwise, we're going to have to refuel it, and we'll charge you for the refueling and a bit of admin fee for the work that goes on. When we started with EVs, we had exactly the same policy. Charge it up before you bring it back. unfortunately, the charging infrastructure isn't quite there necessarily linked to where the Europcar locations are for us to do that. So we took the decision that we'd rent them out with at least 50, but more often than not, it's at least 80% charge, but customer would only have to bring it back with 20%. So we could take that one away. And the other one is, wherever possible, we're trying to rent these vehicles out for the same price as their ICE automatic equivalent. Trust me, they don't cost us the same as the ICE automatic equivalent. But those are two of the things that we're trying to do to try and make it for a customer that it's a choice for them to make that's not based on, well, what's it going to cost me? And it's a bit more based on, what would I like to do? And I kind of hope we'll see things change. And we know we've got some lower priced EVs coming in the market. We know the OEMs are working hard on that. And that will help us as we can start to even out that mix across our fleet of the cost of these vehicles. So we're trying to create demand by introducing policies, whether it's a pricing policy or a charging policy, to make this a choice for a customer to think, okay, well, if I'm going to try this, at least this feels as easy as it could feel, and it's not going to cost me anymore. So that's what we're trying to do.
And I've got to say, I'm very impressed. Just from my experience, because I was able to take a vehicle in Madeira, and I know that the policies are rolled out across most of the countries with slight nuances in each country. But I was very impressed with that. Just that simple mindset of, I don't have to bring it back full. Just for the record, I almost did actually, but but just because we had the charging, you provided a card, and in my instance, all of the energy was included as well, as part of the deal in Madeira. I don't know if we do that in the UK, but certainly it was a very, very good experience from my point of view. And if I had been somebody that didn't ordinarily experience electric, I would have been very, very impressed with my experience, albeit probably a slightly nice little bubble that had been created for me by Europcar. But it gave me the opportunity to really experience a different car in a very safe way, with a very clear understanding of how to go about it, which is, I think, part of the fear, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that hand holding, right? It's how do we help people to do this and make it as easy as possible. In the UK now, Boyman, if you hire a Tesla from us, we include the supercharging. Actually, if you rent another EV from us right now, we don't include the charging, and that's something that we're talking about and looking at and trying to find the right solution to make that easy for customers without actually funneling them into one solution and actually taking away some degree of the choice. But that is something we see. Range anxiety feels like it's going away, but charging anxiety seems to have sort of taken its place. So people aren't worried about, can I go far enough now? And some of that might come from the vehicles that we're choosing. We're trying to get vehicles that have range on them, because if you're hiring a vehicle, you're going somewhere. So we're trying to choose the vehicles that do that. But they've now got this anxiety around, well, where am I going to charge it? And, what do different chargers mean? And, why does this one take so long, but this one didn't? And some of that, I think, is now where the new anxiety kind of lies. And that's a lot of the work we're trying to, where a lot of the education lies in terms of the experience, rather about, it feels less about, well, can the vehicle go far enough? Because the reality is most of the vehicles now, you're going to need to stop before it needs to stop. So just make that a place where you can plug it in, and then everything's easy.
You mentioned a key element to this, Tom, which is people, and the role that your people play in supporting customers to make the best choice for them and make the best use of the technology that you provide. And Paul, I know I echo your thoughts here. We've spoken about this many times. Your strength as a business comes from the individuals that you work with. Your teams are remarkably positive, enthusiastic, knowledgeable. And I'm not just saying that because you're a partner. I have never, ever had a bad experience when I've been to rent a car with Europcar. I have from other providers. How do you keep those people on the front line who deal day in, day out with the same rental process? How do you keep them motivated to give of their best? Because they do.
I mean, I think that's probably linked to the people that they are working with and the structures that they work within. I mean, I think, there'd be people in the business here probably better placed to answer that than me. But my experience is the same whenever I go to one of our branches. I'm surrounded by very positive people. And when they realize, oh, that's Tom and he's the EV guy, the amount of them that want to have a conversation and want to talk to me and all have ideas that are all fantastic and want to be involved. I think there is a culture at Europcar, and I've been fortunate to work for a few companies that have had this kind of culture, but there is a culture of talk to us, tell us what you think. And I think that comes from Gary, our MD, all the way down in terms of, we want to hear what you think. We want to know what you think. And invariably, things come into place because of what those guys have told us, because they're the ones who speak to the customers. And our corporate sales team would be very similar to that. It's kind of like, well, tell me what you've heard. Tell me what they're saying, because that's the voice we need to hear. Otherwise, we'll go round and round at head office all day telling each other what we think and patting ourselves on the back and going, oh, everything's great, well done. It's that external voice that we need. And, that's why, there's been the events this year, right? And that's a big part of that is I need to hear what's being said. And we can do surveys and we can research and we can find things out and we can get scores on a grid. And that's all really helpful. But actually, sometimes half a dozen conversations from an event, that might be all it takes to kind of go, actually, I think I've picked something up from this few days that we need to do something with. And it's similar when I go to a station. I was with our team at Gatwick Airport fairly recently, and very similar there. What do people say? Why are people taking an EV? Why are they not taking an EV? What is it that's stopping them doing it? That's probably typically more interesting for me in my role than maybe the why they are. But they're engaged, they want to be part of it, and they benefit from the vehicles being rented. They want their branch to be busy. That's what they want to do. They want to see those vehicles going out, more people coming back. Oh, I've got this regular customer who comes in. That's always part of what they're doing. So I do think it's a culture thing. I think it's the people that surround those people in the branches in our sort of regional manager structure and those kind of things that really drives that engagement and that support that those guys at the front counter actually have.
And not only do you hear from customers, and you're right, that is the primary source of information, but you get out from behind your desk and you do a few little things around the country, such as the EV rally. And you and I have spent with Paul, I don't know, 2 weeks at least, and 2,500, nearly 3,000 miles driving EVs. What did you learn from the EV rally this year?
Yeah, so the EV rally for me is about getting out of this. We often talk about this bubble or this echo chamber that we're kind of in, and it's about getting out and spending some time. And actually, for me, and I think a lot of the team that do the whole week, it's actually sometimes about getting away from your desk. The amount of ideas that come to me while we're out driving all week are really useful. But this year we wanted to do something different. So we did it for the first time last year, and that was all about, let's find out what this is really like. What is the public charging structure really like? And we brought a camera crew with us, and we wanted to create lots of content that we could put out. And this year we said, okay, well, we're going to do it again. And this year we want it to kind of be about data. We want to be able to back up some of the things we're saying with actual facts and figures to kind of go, we've been saying all these things, and here's what we're actually saying. So we brought along Kevin Booker with us, so record-breaking Kevin Booker, because we sort of felt like we needed a voice of expertise to help us. And Kevin and I had a chat about what we would do and how his role would be with Team Europcar. And we kind of came up with this challenge where the idea would be, in the morning, Kevin would get in the vehicle with one of us. On day one, he was in with me. I would drive in the morning, and I'd just drive. I wouldn't change any settings. I wouldn't do anything. I'd do what someone would do if they've just got in a rental car. They get in, put the stuff in the back, and we're off. And then Kevin would then take over in the afternoon, and he would see how much more efficiently he could drive that vehicle. Now, this isn't Kevin's kind of trying to break a record efficiency. This isn't changing tires and all those kinds. This is still, the vehicle exactly as it would be if you rented it. And it's simple changes in driver behavior, right? We're not talking anything revolutionary here, and they really improve efficiency. And the funny thing for me, and I keep talking about this internally here, but those things actually aren't EV specific. They're the same in an ICE vehicle, just make them more fuel. But we've sort of created this barrier for ourselves by making that data and those stats easily available to everyone to see, So they look at those data points and they use them as the reason not to take an EV. And you sort of want to say they're exactly the same. You're just not paying any attention in your petrol car to those exact things. So the things we learn: read the road ahead. Don't put your foot down on either pedal too harshly, and take it easy. Use the tools the vehicle's got. They've all got an eco mode. Put it in eco mode. That's doing all the other setting stuff you need to do. And as I said, I'm from the travel industry, not the motoring industry, so that's about as technical with cars as I kind of get. All right, there's a setting here. Someone who knows what they're doing has done this for me. That's going to make this more economical. I don't need to really do anything else or really know quite what it's doing. But we did that. I was fortunate enough to be in a very nice car for the week. I was in the Mercedes EQE SUV, and that had some additional tech in it that made it even better. So it had an intelligent regenerative braking system that actually did an awful lot of reading the road ahead for me. So it would know, the speed limit is going to change in a minute. There's a roundabout coming up. Those cars are slowing down, and it would do a lot of that for me. So it just made it even easier. And I always think the good news is we know, one of the things I do know about motor trade and motor industry is that tech that you see in perhaps more luxury vehicles at the moment eventually becomes the tech. So you kind of see that something, okay, well, that's great. And look, Kevin did better than me. Perhaps not overly a surprise if anyone who knows Kevin, but Kevin did better than me, or anyone who knows me. Kevin did better, and he got 10% more efficiency out of that Mercedes. And you kind of go, okay, great. And we kind of looked at the numbers and we said, there is a real value to that. Unfortunately, Rich and the guys from Webfleet were on the EV rally with us, and we got some tracking and we got some data. And we compared best and worst days in terms of regen through the week. And we missed out on 5.8 kilowatt hours between the best and the worst day, which doesn't sound that much, and it doesn't particularly mean anything to the marketing guy in the room who maybe kind of goes, all right. But if you take that and you kind of say, all right, well, that's missed range on a day when I'm out, I'm doing something. So to replace it, I've got to stop at a rapid charger, the most expensive way of charging, because I've got to replace that. I could have kept it. And we took that number and we said, all right, well, let's say you did that. You're in your car every day. Let's put that out across a working year. It's £1,000. It was £1,000 worth of charging to replace that energy that by simply putting the car in eco mode and reading the road ahead saved, or I didn't spend, whatever way you kind of want to look at it. Yeah. So what we kind of learned was there's actual value to that. It can be done. I mean, actually, most of the days on the EV rally this year, in most of the vehicles we had, we achieved the WLTP stats of those vehicles. I would say I'm not sure that's how people really drive. My afternoon with Kevin isn't necessarily how I would normally drive. So somewhere in that 10% is probably the reality. But there is value to it. And there's an important thing that we picked up, and we kind of knew it already, but it supports the fact of there's the range that the manufacturer will tell you the vehicle that can do. And that's from the testing they've done, and it's the right thing for them to say. But then there's the reality of once someone actually gets in it and they drive it the way that people actually drive, particularly because EVs are fun, right? So you're going to put your foot down every once in a while at the lights because it's fun. But somewhere in that is the reality. And you end up with this kind of real world range. Yeah, no speed. But you end up with that kind of real world range. And I think that's one of the really important things we got. So the two things that we're going to come away from the rally really talking about are there are simple things you can change in the way you drive that actually have a financial impact. And if you're a business and you're running God knows how many drivers, and there could be £1,000 a year that could be going just by not putting it in eco mode or something like that. So there's a real value to that. And then this education on the difference between real world and WLTP. I think those are two things that are important to us because we talk about both. We have both stats there and we try and show them. But through our booking journey, how do we do that? And I met with Motability last week, and they have a real challenge with this. That real world range is really important for people to talk about, to know what is this actually going to do. So it's another one of those. It's another stat, it's another data point that we have that we can use and we can talk about. And hopefully for us in that rental, where potentially we are someone's first time in a vehicle, let's not have the conversation and say, well, if you drive like Kevin Booker, you'll get 300 miles out of this. But let's have a real conversation and say, if you drive like 99% of the population, it's going to do about 250 miles. Does that work for you? Where are you going? What are you doing? And that kind of education.
Yeah.
And again, as I say, they're not EV things. That's just driving efficiently things. They're the same in an ICE vehicle. It's just no one pays attention in an ICE vehicle. So it's an interesting challenge. But yeah, we made it all about data and how we use that insight afterwards.
And it leads me to focus the point that you raise about, efficiency and having to charge in the public at the higher costs and all that kind of stuff makes me think about my beloved van, the humble van, because I seem to recall from both the rallies, correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly the first rally and I think the second, you had vans involved in your team. Because obviously vans are really, really important. Obviously for me, a heightened importance, but, for the average humble person out there in the big wide world, they may not realise how much they depend on a van that turns up at the door every day, delivering a parcel, or that is delivering food around the things, that is collecting clothes for the Salvation Army, or is deploying an engineer as the winter rolls in.
We get it. Vans are important.
Okay,
Move on.
Sorry. Vans are important. But is it really interesting, because thinking about that productivity element that you have to drive efficiently, and if you don't get it right, you have to pull over and you have to charge at the cost of £1,000 a year, but you also lose the time. And that's the critical thing, because we know EVs can actually give you a lot of time back. My vehicle is at the fuel station right now. It's there. It's doing. I'm sitting here. I'm, being productive, and my vehicle is full of lovely fuel to carry me to my next destination.
Do you not need to go and check it or anything? Are you sure we can't just lose you for 5 minutes? You sure?
I'm going to talk about vans.
This is the van portion. It's all right.
Thank you. Yes, you should prepare yourself, JC. Prepare. But so is the experience, and are the barriers or challenges different for cars and vans? Is there a difference? And how can you help in the van sector give that same level of confidence that is already there in the car sector to some degree? It's easier in the car sector. Do you see a difference in the van sector?
Yeah, I mean, look, vans is a very important part of Europcar globally, but especially in the UK. It's a very important part of our business, and there's a few of us who hold our hands up and probably talk about cars first, but it is a very important part of what we do, and certainly in that business portion of what we do in the UK, a hugely important part. And we do find things are harder with the vans. We haven't grown our fleet as rapidly in the van sector because the demand doesn't seem to be there yet, and our business, if we buy these vehicles and they're sitting in our branches not doing a lot, that clearly isn't working as a rental vehicle. So we have an increasing fleet. We did take vans on both EV rallies, and if we do EV rallies in the future, which I hope we will continue to take vans with us, because I think it's an important part of showing what we do. So this year's range of vehicles we took were all vehicles that we either have or will have this year on our fleet. So the van we took was a Renault Kangoo van. We haven't had any smaller EV vans on our fleet before, so it was a kind of a new thing. We wanted to test it, we wanted to spend some time with it, we wanted to learn what it's like. Actually, the team that spent time with that van, once they sort of understood it, and once they, EV rally and what we were doing every day isn't kind of really built for that type of van. That small sort of van. So it was about testing it and pushing it. We're going to be getting some Vauxhall combo van as well this year, and we have plans through next year to continue to grow that van fleet. The proposition is, the way we position it is slightly different. We do put vans in places where there could be consumer demand. So in King's Cross, when people are going to be driving into the ultra low emission zone, congestion zones, those kind of things, they're a great option for people to have. So we do put them in those places. But a lot of what we do with the vans is with businesses. It's our B2B customer base that wants them. And we're positioning them as the way to start. If you're a business who hasn't started this yet, flexibility is going to be the important thing. we could sit and you could read everything going and every bit of information, try and digest everything. And at some point, you're probably going to pull the trigger, or you're going to get forced to pull the trigger because your fleet cycle is going to come to a point. It's like, well, now we've got to take EVs, and we haven't done it before, and we're really not ready. And what we're trying to say to businesses from a rental point of view is we offer businesses that flexibility in their fleet. If you go and you lease them or you go and you buy them, you're in them for years, whether they work for you or they don't. If you rent them, and obviously we're hoping people are going to rent them from Europcar rather than anybody else, but if you rent them, you've got the flexibility to actually kind of go, does this work for my business? And a bit like I said at the beginning about the way I like to learn, I would much rather learn by actually trying to do this. So when people come to us, and it's a similar conversation that we have with the OEMs when we're buying fleet, we're kind of trying to say, well, is some of your fleet ready to go electric? And most people are kind of thinking, well, I've maybe got, a couple of guys who do this part of the job, or they're in this part of the country where maybe their mileage isn't so big, or maybe they've got downtime, or maybe they leave their vehicles at a depot overnight where they could be charged and they'd have enough range then for the day. And as we said before, this isn't about kind of going, oh, well, 100% of your vehicles must be electric now then, Mr. Business Owner. This is about taking a little bit. And what we're trying to say to businesses is you've got this, have a flexible part of your fleet. And that's where the van's put in. But particularly while we maybe haven't got some stability in the message right now. And if you think of a lot of businesses work on a 5-year planning cycle, right? Maybe 3, but a lot of them will work on a 5-year cycle, and they'll be thinking about their vehicles for that. Well, if you're coming up to next year, your 5-year plan, it's time to refresh your vehicles. If you go all ICE vehicles at that next rotation, in 5 years' time, you might have to go 100% electric like that. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but that would be the sort of thing that would make me very nervous. So what we're saying is, that's fine. Go and take, the proportion of your fleet that you want as ICE, but let's find the bits of your fleet that could work as an EV and hire them from us. If it doesn't work, or you need a different size, or actually you say, it's not working for that guy, but it might work for that guy. Well, these aren't leases of vehicles you can move them around. You've got that flexibility in it. And I think that's the way forward for vans, is just take small steps, make a start, give it a try, find the parts of your business it works in now. The infrastructure will continue to improve. The range of the vehicles will continue to improve. And that's what will make the rest of your business then work. And you can just gradually shift. And then by the time we've got further down the line and the technology's where we all want it to be now, because we're impatient, once it's there, that's when you start moving more and more and more. And then all of a sudden you've gone, oh, I've got a 100% electric fleet, but I just did it in those increments rather than I've got to do this now. And rental is we believe it's the flexible element to that gives you that control without necessarily making huge commitments.
Tom,
Brilliant.
One of the things that you've done is create a load of assets for drivers who are thinking about moving to electric. And you've got a website, europcar.co.uk, but there are other things that you have, a guide, for instance. Where's the best place for people to go to get that information rapidly and not have to go through your whole website and all that stuff? How do you signpost people to information?
Yeah, so we created a separate site. We call it our EV guide, and it's got 2 sections in it. It's got a showroom section where we talk about the vehicles which we have on our fleet that you can choose from to hire. And we talk about things like real world range and all that kind of stuff. And then it has also a knowledge hub that we've launched recently. And you guys will know Sarah Clark from our marketing team. This is her baby. This is a piece of work that she's been very dedicated to. And it's a vital place for us to put that information. So this sits on its own web address. So it's electric.europcar.co.uk. And that's where we kind of house all this information. We house information about a mob called the EV Cafe on there, and some of the things we've done with you guys, and some of the other videos we've done where we're trying to hopefully say things that help businesses and individuals to. But yeah, so there's 2 areas on there. The showroom shows all the vehicles we've got, so you can start making a choice as to which one might be right for you. And then the second is this new area called the Knowledge Hub, where we're trying to have all that educational content. And we've got lots and lots more planned, and it will all go into this one place. And the idea is that this is where you go before you start. Come and have a look, find out what it means. Why does this charger cost me much less, but it takes forever? And why should I use this one? And how do I plug it in? And how do I open the doors? And how do I do all these kind of things? That's where it all is. So yeah, that's where we try and funnel people to find out what they need to know.
Good stuff. Thank you, Tom.
Brilliant. Tom, it feels like that Europcar are completely committed to changing attitudes, to making a difference. And, the events that you've been involved in have really helped and supported that. I guess I'm just sort of thinking, what does the future look like? The immediate future. Where can people come and experience Europcar, perhaps out at an event in the wild, and kind of experience that. But also, just what do you think? I mean, you've alluded to it a bit, but just in a summary, what's the future look like for Europcar beyond just the next few months and the events? But where do you see the future?
Yeah, I mean, we all know the direction we're going in, and it's important that we remind ourselves of why we're going in the direction, because I think sometimes that gets a bit forgotten. But Europcar has made commitments, and it's made commitments to shareholders about what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. And I think the business is certainly committed to keeping going in that direction. And as I said, things like the ZEV mandate mean that kind of going in that direction, whether we want to or not. So it's about being ready for that. So for me, I see the future as increasingly growing that electric vehicle fleet, cars and vans, hopefully in line with the demand that we see from consumers and businesses. Some of that, Paul, as you mentioned earlier, comes with needing to maybe give people a nudge in the right direction. And I don't expect that to go away anytime soon, but hopefully we'll start getting some consistency and support from the new government in terms of the messaging they put out, and that will help. And we'll start seeing, well, we're already seeing it, but more and more and more electric vehicles coming out. All of that helps push in that direction. And as I say, potentially there's this lag after the end of the ZEV mandate when we are a 100% electric vehicle renting firm. And actually every car rental company will be, unless we hold on to ICE vehicles for a lot longer than we want to. And that'll be an interesting balance for us to decide when we get closer to the end of the 2020s as to, does that work? Are people ready for this? But my hope is that the infrastructure if the infrastructure continues growing at the rate it's growing, then I'm very confident that this will all be absolutely fine, because the difference I saw between the EV rally last year and the EV rally this year already was a huge difference. I felt myself this time, and maybe I spent longer in an EV, so it's a bit more of my confidence, but I found myself kind of going, oh, I could do with a bit of battery. We'll stop at the next place. And invariably, we found them, and we started finding them in places where you wouldn't expect them to be. Last year, we kept going to motorway service stations on the EV rally. This year, we were all over the place, and you kept finding charging. So as that comes, the demand will come. In terms of events, we have done a lot this year, and it's about trying to get in front of people and dispelling myths and positioning rental as a way for people and businesses to try. We'll have CarFest very soon with you guys next month or August for when this is coming out, which I think is a great opportunity for us to get some of that feedback. There's a danger of being in the bubble and patting ourselves on the back and going, aren't we great? Everybody loves this. But actually getting in front of some people who don't do this. And don't forget, our guys in the branches and in the rental locations, they do this all the time. They're hearing that no, and this is why it's a no. So for us to hear that's really important. So I think that event is a critical one in the quite busy calendar that I know you guys have got this year, and I know we've got too, of hearing that feedback and then thinking, well, we've got a 5-year plan too, and the end of our 5-year plan is 2030, which if things change with the government, that's the date. We need to hear these things from people so that we can be ready for that.
Fantastic. Well, Tom, this has been incredible, and you've articulated beautifully the reality of the transition, the things that Europcar are doing, and I just really commend the effort that you guys have put in to building content, communicating with customers, communicating internally, appointing EV experts, thinking about confidence in the depots, at the rental desks, and all of that kind of stuff. And it just feels that you guys have really smashed it, and I'm really looking forward to CarFest, Europcar at CarFest, and getting that feedback and getting outside the Church of Electrification, because Do you know what? It can be a bit stuffy sometimes when we're all listening to, how many kilowatts and, getting, I got 5 kilowatt miles per kilowatt hour. And then somebody telling you, don't say kilowatts, say kilowatt hours. It's like, oh, please, nobody cares outside of this little tiny bubble. It's just, how far will it go, mate? Will it get there? How quickly will I charge it? Whether it's kilowatts, kilowatt hours, they can poke it where the sun don't shine. Anyway, I know it's important. I know it is. But not to most people it isn't. It sounds like, which octane fuel are you using? Oh, it's 95. No, it's not. It's 98. Yes. It's just nonsense.
Yeah,
anyway,
I never knew how my petrol car worked either, so if it makes any difference, I didn't know how.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But Tom, there is a fantastic resource. I think we've already mentioned it. We'll certainly tag it in the comments. Hopefully, come and join us at CarFest, everybody. We will be there. If you are unsure as to how to join us, come and hit us up. We might be able to find a way to get you through the door. Tom, thank you to Europcar for your continued patronage, but also for just supporting the market in the way that you do, both cars and vans. Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. And commercial vehicles in general. We do love Keith Shorter, who's your commercial vehicle expert, who does love a bit of electrification too. So big nod, a little doff of the cap to Keith. But everybody, please do head over to evcafe.org, where you will find all the podcasts. If you've loved talking and listening to Tom, then you will love many more also. John, thank you very much for your lovely support today.
Thank you, Tom. You've been amazing. And here's a man who says, I get really nervous about doing these things. And you've absolutely smashed it. And what I would say, Tom, is that you are a wonderful example of how you control your nerves, your feelings of, I'm not sure I can do this, because you just do. And this is just a conversation. And to anybody who we approach to say, come on and do a podcast, it's not a death by 1,000 questions, is it, Tom?
No, but I'm not sure I gave you much time to ask many questions. I feel like I talked to you quite a lot, but thank you. No, Joy, we've talked about this before.
Loved it.
Good, but I'm glad.
It's all right.
Thanks, buddy.
It's all right, Tom. We'll get you next time to say what's your worst thought, worst memory in childhood, and what's your biggest challenge, and all that sort of stuff. We'll get all of those things another day.
Feels like a new set of nerds for next time.
Indeed. Yeah, you should be afraid next time, to be fair. Yeah. Anyway. Well, everybody, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining, Tom. Thank you, Tom, for sharing your thoughts and your passion for electrification in the way that you have so wonderfully. And until next time, everybody, have a great day.
Adios.
Thanks a lot.